Hey everyone. So in this game, I played the white pieces. My opponent's anonymous. Um, Played the black ones. Pretty simple game. This one. Few inaccuracies from both sides, but by no means were these moves blunders. So it's just we did the Ruy Lopez opening in this game. Personally, I recently started playing Ruy Lopez a lot. I find it has some advantages for white, and if black doesn't play carefully enough and just overextends his pawns on the queen side, then it can become a real hassle for him. So we'll just get started. So we went on with e4, e5, and f3, and c6, going into the knight's opening, but then I played bishop to b5. This is a Ruy Lopez right here. Um, doesn't really do much right now for white, but it threatens the capture of the knight on c6 square. So, I mean, proper continuation might have been just to play d6, but the opponent played the bird's defense, so it's d4, put his knight there. Does a couple of things, it gets rid of this awkward knight for him on b5, threatens it. I'm not going to overextend my pawn chains and just play something like a4 and hopes to protect the bishop, because in the early games, even though knights are more valuable, in the end games, if you have a bishop, it tends to be more valuable generally than the knight, so I'm really not going to exchange my bishop for his knight. So at this point I just took the knight with knight to d4, and at this point he has no other option than just capturing my knight again. So he did that, and then I just started to develop. As you can see right now, I'm ahead in development. His one lone pawn is overextended, and it's on the d file, but it's on the fourth rank, my half of the board, and he doesn't have any other minor pieces out there. So it's starting to become a rather pleasant game for me. But I do have to be careful now that I just blocked my bishop from coming back anymore with the move d3, that it doesn't get trapped in the pawn chain on the queen side. So from here on, he played a5. It's an alright move, not a great move. Basically, the idea being here that once, if I don't move my bishop over here, he played the next move would be c6, and I would pretty much have to give up my bishop because I can't go here, can't take over here, right? So even if I retreat back over here, then sorry, b5 will come down, and if I retreat back over here, again b5 comes down, and this bishop is lost for a knight, or not a knight, pawn. So I see this move happening, and for me, if I have to move the bishop right now, and I thought the only safe square would be on a4, so I do that, move my bishop to a4, and after that, he plays c6. Okay, which, again, it's preparing to move the pawn to b5 and just not pinning, but like basically cornering my bishop. From there on, I kind of made a mistake. And I'm fortunate that the opponent didn't really see it. And again, these are blitz games, so all of these games just end in pretty much less than 4 minutes. Rarely do they go over that. So it's really hard to just get your mind in the speed and just focus on the game. But from here on, I played bishop to b3, which, I mean, I immediately after I played that, I realized it was a mistake. Because from here on, the best move for the opponent would have just been to play a4. If he did that, then there's not really a way that I can save my bishop anymore. If he does that, I'm not going to capture on a4 because it's protected by the rook on a8. So, and basically I'm just going to have to put my bishop on c4, and after that, he can just bring down the pawn to b5 and the bishop's gone. And like I thought about this move, but you know, time pressure and all that, didn't really want to put much pressure on myself, so I just played bishop to b3. After that, I realized it was a mistake, but apparently he didn't see it. So he played b5. Now this is an important lesson. Yes, b5 would have been the final nail in the coffin, like for my bishop. A couple moves back, but you have to keep in mind the order of the moves. If you played a4 first, then the next move would have been b5, and then that's good enough for me to lose my bishop. But he played b5 before he played a4, and this allows my bishop to get away now. Now I just played a3, and this just allows my bishop to come back to a2. Also, it's a really nice space for my bishop because it completely eyes down the whole diagonal for the f7 weakness square. Yeah. And after that, he continued on putting the pressure on my bishop. He played the a4, but at this moment it's just too late. One move too late. Doesn't threaten my bishop in any way, so I just moved it back to a2. Thereon, as you can see, I felt rather good about this game. At this moment, he has a double pawn on the whole d-file, and the queenside pawn chain is completely overextended, but at the same time, he has no other minor pieces out. You know, so that's sort of a weakness in Black's position at this moment. Thereon, he played queen e7, which I didn't really see the point, you know. I mean, putting the queen out in front of the king's not really doing anything. At the same time, you're just blocking the bishop on f8 from coming out, unless if you're planning on fianchettoing shadowing it onto the g7 square, which is okay. But move the queen last. That's like my personal preference. Unless, you know, if you have a plan, then that's a different thing. But at this moment, I didn't really see a plan, so I just went on and castled, not worrying too much about the queen move. And now I realize I have to develop my queen side pieces now. You know, my king is safe, you know, for the moment, so I'm not too worried about that. Then he went on to play queen h4 again. Don't really see the purpose of the move. I mean, obviously, I'm gaining tempo over here because he moved the queen twice in a row, right? And in the early games, the beginning, you don't want to do that. Don't want to move your pieces twice unless if you have a plan or you have to. So I'm gaining tempo, but I'm already gaining tempo because I'm white. So I'm up by like 2 tempos right now. Basically, what he's trying to do is trying to checkmate me on the h2 square. If I didn't move anything, you know, and this is not going to happen, but his plan was to put the bishop on, with the queen on h4, his plan was to put the bishop on d6, eyeing down the checkmate on h2. So obviously, you know, it's just moving the queen puts up red flags on your opponent's head. So, you know, I see that. I realize I want to develop and protect the h2 square. So I just decided to move my knight now. So knight goes to d2, and if he puts the bishop over here now, I can simply play knight to f3, threatening the queen and at the same time protecting the h2 square. But again, I was surprised he played d6, not really seeing the purpose of this move. Um, it doesn't do anything. Now the bishop can't come down to d6, it wasn't a good plan to checkmate me on h2, but at least it was a plan. I don't see the purpose of this d6 move. Doesn't accomplish much. So I just kept on playing knight f3. Yes, I moved my piece twice in the opening, but at the same time I'm threatening the queen. The queen will retreat. I'll gain momentum. So that's all good. So, and he played his queen back to d8. At this moment, I was really surprised. He had no intention of keeping the queen in the play. He pretty much just wasted 2 to 3 moves on this plan, right? He moved his queen to e7, then he moved it all the way back to, h4, and then he moved it all the way back to d8. The last 3 out of the 4 moves for him were the queen, and I'm thinking that he lacks a plan at the moment. So from there on, I decided to play rook rook e1. Pretty much just getting my rights on the e-file. The e-file has my white pawn on it, and if the pawn's not there, it's a nice open file for the rook. And you want nice open files for your rooks, right? And as long as they're near the center, ideally if you have like an open E or D file for your rook, then that's nice. Both of them for you would just be like a gold mine, but this right here, I felt comfortable playing e1, rook e1, so I did that. And from there on, he played bishop to e7. Again, he's just trying to develop his pieces. He's just trying to castle now. He's gonna play knight f7. Knight f7 now, or knight f6. Sorry, and just castle. So then on, I decided that this double pawn, or this pawn over here on d4 is pretty awkward for me. And if I can just get rid of it, then I have a nice control of the center, and I can develop my other pieces. So I played c3, and he took, then I took with the pawn. And as you can see, I have better control of the center, and feels like a good game, but you can never be too sure. Thereon he played bishop g4, pretty much pinning my knight. But since he's pinning my knight, I don't want to overextend my pawn chain. If I play h3, he can just play the bishop back to h5, and I'm not gonna play g4. That's just overextending my queen side or king side structure, and I want to get my queen out of safety, or out of the pin over here. And I don't want to just put my queen anywhere. If I do that, then he can just capture, and if he captures, then I'll have like a awkward double pawn, and my king will be wide open for attacks. So I want safety, but at the same time I want to preserve the 3 pawn structure on the king side. So I decided to play d4, essentially trying to get my queen onto d3. So even if he captures on f3, I can capture it back with my queen. And then he decided to play bishop to h4. Not really seeing the plan over here. Maybe he's looking to put the queen on f6 and eyeing down the f2 weakness square for white. And then if the knight wasn't here in the picture at all, then he could just play f2 and win the rook due to the protection of the queen on f6. But that's kind of too far in the future. So I just decided to play queen d3, and then on he played queen f6, again just trying to eye down this weakness square. And I wasn't really thinking too much about that. I wasn't thinking too much about that, like I said. So I just decided to take on h4. So at this moment, we're pretty even in material, but I just feel like I have a better position because if you just look at the black's queen side, right? Like it's not obliterated, but it's pretty open, right? And the king hasn't castled, and it's way past move 10 now. So that's not a good sign. And my pieces are pretty active, except for this bishop on c1, right? So I decided to play bishop to f4, get the bishop into the game, at the same time threaten the d6 square. And again, he moves his queen. He's moving his queen a lot, which is comforting for me because I'm just gaining tempos, right? From there on, I decided to play bishop to g3 because obviously the queen is threatening my bishop on f4, so I move it back over here, and then from here he decided to play knight e7, getting ready to castle, right? And I wanted to prevent the castling from happening. I'm trying to attack because I'm up by a few tempos, right? So I decided to give my rook a chance on e1 and get him into the action. So I played pawn e5 because yeah, it threatens this pawn on d6, and once his pawn is gone, it leaves a nice open file for the rook, and pins the knight to the king at the same time. And you know, this pawn needs to capture because the queen's being threatened as well right now. So then on he played pawn takes on e5, and at this point I had three options. I could have captured the e5 pawn back with my bishop, the pawn, or the rook. I didn't want to capture with the pawn because it leaves my queen hanging right in the like near center of the board, pretty much, and that could be trouble for me if he just decides to play rook d8 and tries to gain a few tempo points by just like chasing my queen away, and I didn't really want to do that. And if I took with my rook at this point, it's an okay move, but it doesn't really prevent him from castling, right? I mean, he can just castle at this moment, doesn't do much. So I decided to take with my bishop. So the bishop took on e5, threatens the queen, and the queen moved to g6. This, I thought, was an opportunity for me to prevent him from castling. We're pretty much even in material points right now, but you know, his queen has been pretty active. My queen is sitting there not threatening much, so I have the opportunity right now to just exchange queens, get them off the board completely, and I have these nice two bishop diagonals covered, so I felt comfortable doing that. And so I just exchanged the queens at this moment. He's not going to, or he shouldn't at least, take with the knight, because if he does, then I'm going to win the rook pretty much. Because if the knight takes, then bishop goes on g7, gives a discovered check by the rook on e1, and I'll win the rook. So he decided to capture with pawn pawn from g7, which was okay, I guess. I mean, not much he could have done. And you know, since the queens are off the board, I just decided to play bishop g7 anyways, and at this point he cannot castle anymore, right? He could castle on the queen side, it's not like set in stone, but if he does, the king is just completely open, there's no pawn structure protection. Just not advisable for him to do that, right? And since this rook will have to move, he's not going to be able to castle on the king side anymore. So he played rook h7, which was okay, but now I can just play bishop to f6, and this kind of pins the knight and threatens my rook to come on to e7 and cause some trouble for black. And so he decided to prevent all of that, and he played bishop to e6. Now at this point, bishop e6 was one of the only minor pieces active for black, and he played bishop e6, but at this point I feel like I have a good position. I'm up by a pawn, so I can just pretty much get my bishop on e6 and get rid of the white bishops and have a decent endgame for me. So that's exactly what I did. Bishop on a2 for me wasn't doing much now at this moment, so I just decided to get rid of the bishops from the board. I took and he took from pawn f7, so that's done. And I just took with the rook from e1 and put my rook on e6, capturing his pawn, also at the same time threatening the knight capture. But I can't capture the knight anymore because the rook is open to protection, open for protection from the h7 square. So thereon he decided to play rook a7, just adding extra protection. I don't think that was the best move. I would have tried to get the king out of the mess, stop the knight from being pinned at all. So I might have played something like f8 or f7 at this point, not d8, because that still pins the knight. I want the knight to be free, so I probably would have played something like f7 or f8, but he decided to play rook a7, which was okay, and I just decided to get all my rooks into action, so I played rook a1 to e1, putting more pressure on the e7 square, and from there on he decided to play rook d7. This is where I thought I have a winning shot at the game, like a clear winning shot, because now I can just win material at this point, so I decided to take on c6. He can't take the pawn, right? Or he can't take my rook anymore, right? Because the knight is still pinned from the rook on e1. So that was good for me, so I decided to take the material. And this is where he made the mistake. This is where I would say he definitely lost the game. He played king to f7, but again, it was a couple moves late. Just like he was just one move late in capturing my bishop early on in the game. So he decided to play king f8, f7, which again I thought was a blunder. I did a quick computer analysis, and again the computer was in agreement with me. He should have just played something like king f8. But because he played king f7, I thought that I could win the whole rook a free rook at this moment. And now I pretty much should have captured with the rook, or I could captured the knight with the rook, and or I could have captured with the bishop. But I thought that if I capture the bishop, I have a more clear continuation. So because if I capture with my rook, then he can just capture the. He can't really capture anything. Sorry, but I just felt more comfortable doing it with the bishop. And again, according to the computer, it didn't really matter how I captured it, right? So I just captured the knight on e7 with my bishop, and then went on to he didn't really have much choice, right? Like I'm up by an entire minor piece right now, so he needs to capture something right now. So he did rook captures on e7, and at this point, I'm up in material. I don't see any immediate threats of checks, so I decided just to take back the rook on e7, and again at this point he pretty much has to capture my rook on e7, right? So he did that, and at this point, after the next move, he resigned. I just played rook c7 because that's like a um, attack on the rook and the king at the same time, because the king has to move, right? Doesn't really matter where he moves. He has 6 squares he can move to, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. But it doesn't matter where he moves. He's going to lose the rook the next move. And you saw that, obviously. Very easy tactic, very cool tactic. And this is where he resigned. So this was a good game for me. I made a few mistakes, but the opponent just made one too many more mistakes than me, and this is why I won the game. So yeah, hopefully you enjoyed that. Join me for the next one. Thanks.